Well, today I have the great privilege to introduce our opening keynote, Akpezi Ogbuigwe, a colleague, a friend, a mentor, and a woman that brings to us a sense of deep purpose and meaning to the work that she does and that we do collectively. Akpezi Ogbuigwe is presently promoting a new educational campus initiative to support environment and sustainability literacy and skills in higher education institutions throughout Africa. She serves on the Council of the Earth Charter International and is a regional advisor for the United Nations African Regional Centers of Excellence. Akpezi was the former head of environmental education and training in the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, and she served as UNEP's lead focal point for the UN Decade of Education for Sustainable Development and the coordinator of the Ecosystem Management Program at UNEP. She's amazing. She's contributed to the knowledge in the field of environmental law and education for sustainable development via multiple publications, one of which I was able to get from her today. I kept asking questions and she said, "Read my book." I encourage you to read more about Akpezi and her accomplishments in greater depth on the AASHE website. She's also served on several international scientific committees and traveled the world and throughout the African continent extensively facilitating cooperation and partnerships for sustainable development. Well, this is how I've had the great fortune to cross paths with Akpezi. In 2016, at MIT, we hosted the steering committee of the UN Global Universities Partnership on Environment and Sustainability, and concurrently the World Summit on Sustainable Development for Higher Education. The headliner of both of these events was Akpezi. Akpezi took the house down. The moment we were introduced, I knew I had met a force of nature, a woman with a purpose, a passionate storyteller, a poetic voice of truth who embodies an immense sense of courage, a woman that brings a voice to the complex challenges set forth in the SDGs, and a woman that eloquently and boldly is able to bring to the forefront the essential role of women in advancing the principles of sustainable development in their own communities, as well as the dire impact on women and families if we do not. A primary focus of the week that Akpezi was with us on the campus was a dialogue similar to this week regarding the SDGs. And she joined us at this event to openly grapple with how can the UN's SDGs have the potential to transform higher education across the globe. And a question that I believe that we'll experience this week, and it will weave its way through the conference and as we grapple with continuously in our home institutions. So when Akpezi spoke, however, I could hear in her not only a sense of hope and possibility, but also a grave sense of urgency. So I hope Pittsburgh is prepared for the house to come down. So without further ado, it is my great and humble pleasure to introduce my colleague, my good friend, and a most inspiring woman, Akpezi Ogbuigwe.
Thank you, Julie. I was looking for Akpezi. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank AASHE for inviting me to this outstanding conference. I call it outstanding because it is. I've attended many global, national, regional conferences, but this, I think, is one of the most outstanding. I thank the organizing committee for all the interactive and exciting information posted on the website, which has created anticipation in all the attendees. It's a real privilege to be here. I would also like to acknowledge my many colleagues and friends in the sustainability and environmental education community of practice that I have worked with and or interacted with for the past 18 years. And this includes Julie, of course. They have all contributed one way or the other to the theories I hold today. I have referred to many of them in this talk. Finally, permit me to express my gratitude to my husband and daughter who are here with me today. God bless you all. Professor Stephen Hawking, it was, before he died. He had said, a new planet able to hold life must be found as soon as possible if mankind is to survive. Sorry. All right, maybe let's just see. My story is going to be like this. We're just going to go through a journey. First of all, we'll set the pace. And then we'll introduce the Sustainable Development Goals. And after that, we will take a look at the higher education institutions and what they have been doing. And then what needs to be done to raise the bar. But I agree, what we want to do here is not just to raise the bar. We want to rise to the challenge. We want to make sure we nail it by year 2030. So we would also look at that. So back to Professor Stephen Hawking. He said, let's better start looking for another planet. But I think we should take him very seriously. But then, looking at it again, is that the solution to our present predicament? Flee away to another planet if we could? I think not. The problem is not with planet Earth, but with the humans on the planet. They will do to any planet what they have done to this planet. So the sooner we grapple with us, the better. Reminds me of the phrase of Cassius, a Roman nobleman uttered to Brutus in Shakespeare's play, Julius Caesar. He said, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. However, the Sustainable Development Goals gives an alternative narrative, showing that we do not need to escape from the Earth to the Moon or the Sun or Mars or to the newly discovered planet Proxima, which is said to be possibly Earth-like. We can study them or even go on vacation, but we can make Earth habitable socially, environmentally, and productively if we all apply our minds to it. And universities of the 21st century have the privilege to create this future convincingly, concretely, through teaching, research, outreach, community service, and sustainability, this future thinking, big picture, with innovation and ethics embedded in all the streams. With the challenge of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, universities have been thrust into an era of unprecedented, unparalleled learning experience. It is important that we all see this future of possibilities before us, if we are to arrive there. If we don't see this future, we won't get there. But if we fix our vision on it, we will get there. Now, the realities of today are frightening. And we could find some of them, examples of what you have today in our world. Just last week, in his speech at the United Nations General Assembly, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, relayed a litany of global setbacks towards the future we want. Starting with what he called trust deficit disorder. He listed insecurity, massive existential threats to people and planet, endless wars. He went on and on and on. And he mentioned inequality as a clear obstacle to achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Then he said, let's call it as it is. The prospect of machines with the discretion and power to take human life is morally repugnant. Frightening, isn't it? And yet, you could add to that list many more global challenges, the complexity of which authors like Harold Glaser and others have described as true wicked problems. However, this is only one side of the coin. We must be aware that humans are confronting these challenges piece by piece, and some taking small and big steps depending on their capacity towards the future we want. Let me share with you some few stories from the California Wildlife Center, from Greenpeace, and from Africa. Yes, that one is from the California Wildlife Center. And there was this injured mockingbird. And what did this professor who found it do? They caught it and prepared custom-made snowshoes. And of course, in Portugal, in May 2016, they made history by running for 4 days in a row on renewable energy alone. This is happening in the midst of all. Just look at that. The beautiful picture showing a deer skipping along Pool Harbor at dawn was captured by Dave Mott as he walked his dog. Our world is still breathtakingly beautiful. In 2015, a endangered Arabian sand cat, that had not been seen for 10 years was spotted. It's coming back. The earth can be healed. Plastics. Can I smell any around? Plastics. They are the big problems we love to carry around. England's 5-pence plastic bag charge, introduced in 2015, led to a whopping 85% reduction in single-use plastic bags. The same can be said of the experience in Kenya and Rwanda. If you go to those countries, just make sure you don't go with any plastic. Yeah, that beautiful bird, it was thought to be locally extinct, but was rediscovered by chance by a group of bird watchers. As the first, it had not been seen in Nepal for 178 years, and it was sighted. So good things are happening everywhere. Yes, what's happening there? Let's go to India. More than 24 million people watched a viral video on an Indian restaurant's inspiring way of reducing food waste and helping others. Papadavada urges its customers, as well as the wider community, to put their leftover food in a fridge outside in front of the restaurant. The fridge is open all day, so anyone in need of food can visit it at any time. Hopefully, many more restaurants will start doing this. And that other story from Brazil. This guy helped to save a penguin that was, that washed over to the shore and had oil, chemicals, on his body, and it was starving. So this guy took the penguin and nursed it back to health. He named it Dindim, Dindim stayed with him for 11 months. And then after he had healed, he went back to his location. And what happens is that every year, Dindim spends 8 months of the year with Jao and then goes back to the sea. That's a way of saying thank you. These are animals. And then, last month, I was in Malawi as part of my assignment as advisor for the United Nations Regional Centers for Expertise in Africa. We visited a stream which had completely dried up. And under a stream restoration project led by Professor Chiota of the University of Malawi, working with local women, these women you see, and some men, they used ecosystem management technique. They were able to plant trees and improve the biodiversity in the area. And before you knew it, the stream was flowing again. They were very, very happy. I had to join them in the dance. If I start on the incredible work being done in universities, I wouldn't stop. And you don't want that. There are several university networks like AASHE in North America. You have similar ones in Asia, Africa, Europe, transforming their campuses, raising sustainability conscious and literate teachers and students. Let me end this introductory remarks with one of my most incredible stories in education that I have ever seen. Now, if you look at those 4 girls there, 5 girls, they come from a remote town in Nigeria. And that town is in a state that was, I think by 2006, the state was almost a failed state. Schools had been closed down, and children couldn't go to school. But then, come the latter part of 2006, a Mr. Obi became the governor. And what did he do? He just started slowly investing in schools. He took the schools that had been seized from the missionary organizations, returned it to them, and said, please, I want you to renovate and make these schools functional again. But I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm going to work with you. So he bought computers, did all kinds of, worked with them, retrained the teachers, worked with the missionary organizations, and ensured the schools started working again. And then after 2 or 3 years, he left. He was no longer the governor. But then, come 2015, that's about 9 years after that label, the schools from that region score the best in the national examination that takes place. And just this year in California, at the Technovation competition, these schools from a remote town in Nigeria came first in technology design. You need to go there. And that is the power of education. That is how education can transform anywhere. You try education, good education, education for sustainable development, and you'll find light. Good education transforms people, and transformed people do transform societies. So what is this future we want? What are these sustainable development goals? On 25th September 2015, the 194 countries of the United Nations adopted the 2030 Development Agenda titled Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. A major part of this agenda was the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and their associated 169 targets. The SDGs for Transforming Our World is a bold attempt to capture the steps we need to take to the future we want. This journey started long ago. from the beginning of time to works of great minds like Leonardo da Vinci, the artist, observer of nature and inventor. He studied nature and proved through science, what we have seen examples of biomimicry and others, that humans will do well to learn from nature, to live in nature, and to solve human problems. To scientists like Rachel Carson, who through her research on toxicology, ecology, and epidemiology suggested that agricultural pesticides were building up to catastrophic levels, leading to other damage to animal species and human health. She was joined by others, and by 1972, we had the first United Nations Conference on Human Environment held in Stockholm. And from then on, it's been conferences. In 1980, the IUCN also released the World Conservation Strategy. By 1987, we had our common future, the Brundtland Report, that popularized sustainable development and defined sustainable development as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. From there on, we had the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, where we had about 4 conventions coming out of that conference, and Agenda 21. But people don't really talk much about another document that was supposed to have come out that year, and it's called the Earth Charter. It was one of the documents, but because of its directness, it dealt with, things that we don't really want to confront. It was sidelined. But the civil society community determined that, no, we're not going to let go. We must make sure that this document comes up. So in year 2000, the Earth Charter was launched, and what it really gave to the world is that it said to move forward. If the global community is to move forward, we must recognize that in the midst of a magnificent diversity of cultures and life forms, we are one human family and one earth community with a common destiny. We must join together to bring forth a sustainable global society founded on respect for nature, universal human rights, economic justice, and a culture of peace. To this end, it is imperative that we, the peoples of earth, declare our responsibility to one another, to the greater community of life, and to future generations. In the same year 2000, world leaders signed up another to-do list, the Millennium Development Goals. And then, 2 years after that, governments and world leaders gathered together again in Johannesburg for the World Summit on Sustainable Development. And one important thing that happened at that summit was that everybody agreed that, see, we are coming up with all these declarations and goals, but we are not moving towards it. It's as if we're moving further away from the future we want. So a few countries, like Japan and others, they recommended that what we need is a decade of education for sustainable development. A decade to be focused on training people, learning together to produce the kind of generation that can, take us to the future we want. And it is important to note the underlying values of this decade of education for sustainable development. They said what we need to promote respect for dignity and human rights of all people throughout the world, respect for the human rights of future generations, respect and care for the greater community of life in all its diversities, respect of cultural diversity. So the issue of respect was highlighted. So it's part of education for sustainable development. The next landmark global meeting was the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, Rio +20, which took place in Rio de Janeiro in 2012. This resulted in a focused political outcome document, which contained clear and practical measures for implementing sustainable development. In Rio, member states decided to launch a process to develop a set of sustainable development goals, which will build upon Millennium Development Goals and converge with post-2015 development agenda. The conference also adopted groundbreaking guidelines on green economy policies. And then, in 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals were born. So we'll just take a quick look. So those are the goals. Can you read the words? Yeah, so what is goal 1, please? Yeah, goal 2? Goal 3? Goal 4? Yeah. Yeah. Goal 7? Eight. Yeah. 9. Now we missed out 9. Yeah. Let's read 9. Let's read it out because it's important. Okay. 10. 11. 12. Yeah, that's a big one. 13. Yeah, partnerships. What is happening here? This is partnerships I see here. Partnerships, universities, business, government, partnerships for the goals. Without partnership, like the Lifetime Award, winner said, we can't go far. But with partnership, working together, we would make it. And another important thing about the goals for us to note is that they are all interconnected. They are all connected. So you may succeed, you may be an expert in goal, let's say goal 8, but you need to find out how it affects the other goal, how it's connected. Or maybe by winning one of the goals, you are actually creating problem for the other goal. So they are interconnected and all disciplines need to work together. There's not going to be one star in this thing. All of us need to win together. So, what is the role of universities in all this? And what has universities been doing? From the 1990s, the progressive involvement of education can be seen, in particular higher education. I spent the 10 years of the United Nations Decade of Education for Sustainable Development working with universities all over the world, and in particular universities in Africa, to embrace the sustainability challenge as part of UNEP's contribution to the decade. My approach was this: We could disagree on the legitimacy of the word sustainable development and argue, as opposed to environmental education. Personally, I prefer basic environmental education as a tool to draw people's attention to social and economic issues, climate change, biodiversity depletion, ecosystem management, governance issues, and to individual responsibility to people and the environment. Because environmental education brings all these subjects to in an interconnected way that promotes holistic solutions. Environmental education also ensures basic eco-literacy in education. David has many articles on this. Albert Einstein said, "Look deep into nature, and then you will understand everything better." Michelangelo said, "Nature has always been an important part of how we learn." So we need to remember that. The simpler the message and the language, the more everybody, whether in the North or in the South, from every group can understand and own the message. And we need people to own the message. However, today we have several competing agendas from the international agencies demanding global response. You have climate agenda, you have global citizenship agenda, and many more. Let's take a look at some of this. You see, it's just there. There's so many. But then they all sound nice until examined through the microscope. But it's really not about the name, whether it's environmental education, citizenship education, global education, climate change education, or whatever. The world wants peace. The world wants justice and equity, and an economic system that enables individuals and communities to thrive equitably while also sustaining the capacity of the environment to support this for future generations. One of the lessons higher education institutions have learned during this period is that higher education cannot solve the world's problems. But then, looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, we find that the key players are government, businesses, and people. Particularly government and businesses, they will do what they want to do. But then, higher education is involved in teaching, research, community development. That's what universities do. Doing this with passion, that's another thing we find, that doing what you do with passion, with conscientiousness, and with a vision mindset will be the path to greater relevance and contribution in the Sustainable Development Goals. So we continue to do what we'll do, but now we put a heart into it, we give it a soul. Within the last 20 years, higher education have embraced this challenge to rethink teaching and research in the context of environment, social and economic sustainability. They have done so many things. I have a list of them here, but I don't have to mention them because I see them around. I see them, I saw the exhibitions, the kind of people that are going to exhibit, the inventions, the curriculum development, and the advances that higher education have made. Now, the question is, if so much is being done, why didn't we meet the targets of the Millennium Development Goals? Why do we still have wicked problems referred to above? There are still many critical challenges for us as a global community to look at. We have the concept of unlimited economic and corporate growth on a finite planet. We need to look at it. We have the values of materialism and greed that drives production and consumption patterns. We need to look at what World Bank says. World Bank says economic growth hasn't benefited anyone, everybody equally. They say that neither has it benefited the environment. There are other persistent and besetting issues of poverty, of anthropogenic climate change, of biodiversity loss, and other forms of environmental degradation and waste. The problem of creating employment in decent work, and of course, the dark side of technology and the internet. The list goes on. So how can we raise the bar? I know where we want to go is to rise to that challenge. But first of all, we need to raise the bar. Rick Clarkson and Wayne Calder feel so strongly about what they call strong sustainability, as opposed to the weak forms of sustainability currently in practice in higher education. They emphasize that research and practice need to be oriented towards sustainable future by growing beyond eco-efficiency and greening a small set of courses. In this regard, institutions may need reform. Some may need reforms, while others need a redesign. Stephen Sterling says, universities need to develop what he calls enough responsibility. That is, responsibility. That is the ability to respond to the profound challenge that is now presented. This can be contrasted to most of the responses that obtain in many higher education institutions, which focus on the same eco-efficiency in the service of economic growth. According to Rick Clarkson, a voracious globalization economy has been greened in part, but we have not altered its course to embrace a stronger vision of sustainability. So we may ask ourselves deeper questions like, what are our institutions' response ability to the widening gap between rich and poor? Or to care for the community of life with understanding, compassion, and love? I just quoted from the Earth Charter. Or our institutions' responsibility to the underlying values listed in the Education for Sustainable Development of respect. And better still, what is my responsibility? Then we need to rethink the academic reward system. I know this is a touchy one. Einstein counsel could be helpful here. He said, no problem could be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. Let's get creative, even in the academic reward system. Then, we're talking about how do we raise the bar? We will come to rising from there. So there is need to advance new areas of research and old recurring themes of systems theory, biomimicry, and others. We need to advance research in these fields. On system theories, Fridtjof Capra, who has researched, taught, and written on this subject for over 30 years, calls for an understanding of the hidden connections between biology, social, and ecological and cognitive interactions. He says systemic problems require systemic solutions and not piecemeal approaches that you tick off and tick down. He calls for an overall systemic analysis and approach to the Sustainable Development Goals. According to Leonardo da Vinci, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Higher education institutions need to deepen mainstream discourse, research and action in sustainability subjects, theories, and complex areas such as carbon-neutral circular economy, learning to live with others sustainably, seeking the well-being of all. Others are curriculum development, transformative learning, and pedagogy. We need to keep rethinking these things. Agroecology as opposed to industrial system, artificial intelligence and computer modeling, the use and misuse of technology, behavior science, neuroscience, and how it can help us understand human behaviors with regard to the environment. I'm aware that MIT neuroscientists and others have studies in these areas which can be taken forward into other disciplines. This can help to explain why it is so difficult to embrace environmental habits, even when people have the awareness. There is need for more cross, inter, and multidisciplinary research, studies, teaching to garner real solutions for the goals. To promote a high-quality, diverse, yet integrated curriculum with programs that are professionally strong, academically rigorous, with roots in all the dimensions of sustainability. The task is huge and small at the same time, but everybody can contribute, from a modest student recycling program on campus to a technological innovation that reduces the cost of building decent homes for the poor, as well as programs that unite the North and the South together around the goals, forging lasting friendships and partnership for institutions and faculties. All are very, very important. Now, I would quickly go on to rising to the real challenge. What is the real challenge and how do we rise to it? so that by year 2030, we are actually nailing it. The SDGs are about a just, peaceful, and sustainable future. That's what we want to see. So it's when we achieve that, that we can say, yes, that's it. It's about people. It's about people and the environment we live in. Rising to the challenge involves doing what the ancient founders of higher education did. Their quest to understand the world and love for learning was driven by an inherent obligation to address the issues of society. Higher education institutions need to maintain the freedom that such learning institutions have always been known for, to promote peace and mutual respect among a diverse people. In the ancient world, the search for the truth, a desire to quench the intellectual hunger, and the yearning to understand more about the world we live in gave rise to centers of higher learning. Initially, these centers were informal. People with imaginative minds and the leisure to learn gathered semi-formally about the great scholars of their day. It was incidental that the interaction of these imaginative minds precipitated to some of the founding elements of modern society. So the forerunners of the universities were the educational practices among the ancient communities, most notably the Greeks. One could say that universities were birthed, as it were, by a clique from society whose quest to understand the world and love for learning was driven by an inherent obligation to address the issues of society. The obligatory nature embedded in the foundations of universities continues to fuel the transformative elements of universities to the present age. Sustainability is not coercion, but an appeal to the head, the heart, and hands. Coercion is never part of learning. What is needed are pragmatic solutions, as sustainability is indeed how a diverse people could live in harmony. And that is why the themes of respect, as enunciated in the Earth Charter and the education for sustainable development values, are very, very important. Justin Cook puts it this way: schools must become learning institutions and not institutions of learning. It is in such climate that higher education institutions can produce students who will be reflective, and that is important. Education is no longer education if it is teleguided. Secondly, how do we rise to the real challenge? We need to know that it's going to be a long, hard journey. So university stakeholders need to commit for the long haul. And by this, I include the funders, the partners, the school boards, administrative systems, teachers, students, everybody, particularly the private sector. It's not to fund for 2 years and you move on to another thing. No. Make long-term commitments. This also applies to individuals. We must all do the right thing and do it long enough to make a difference. The teacher, the lecturer, the professor is critical to raising the bar or to rising to the challenge. Access to research funding, continuous professional education discourse should be provided to support university teachers in engaging with sustainability issues. Where such support is not available, the teachers should not wait. The teachers should themselves, as much as they can, explore these goals and how they interact with their subjects and research areas. Justin Cook, in his recently edited publication, said, "It is evident that we live in a very complex world. We need new competencies. In today's setting, learning needs to be lifelong and life-wide. And the opportunity before both teacher and students, indeed, before all of us, is not just to be subject to the future, but to be complicit in its formation." Fitzgerald Capra counseled that academics must care not just about the next graduation, but about the next generation. And Jen Walls, speaking at the World Environmental Education Congress 3 years ago, shared an interesting picture. And this was what was written on it. He said, "Here are the students of today, attending the universities of yesterday, being taught by the teachers of the past with methods from the Middle Age to solve the problems of the future." We are living in unique times that demand unique contributions from unique teachers. An example from Africa, in the 60s, when Africa gained its independence, it was the university lecturers. There was this spirit of nationality. Everybody wanted to support everybody on the continent. And this spirit was forged because the teachers carried the fire of nationalization in their belly. So as they taught maths, engineering, whatever they taught, that fire was there. And students came out, who wanted nationhood. We can do that again with regards to the future we want, with regards to the sustainable development goal. The teacher is critical in rising to the challenge. Good teachers do more than teach. They stir, they challenge, they amuse, they inspire at levels which we are hardly aware. As much as their lives and their reflections show students a leadership to which they can aspire and a standard by which they can hold themselves accountable. It is said that inspirational learning only happens when you have truly inspirational teachers. So in rising to the SDG challenge, beyond what currently obtains, there is need for inspirational teachers, students, and campuses. Justin Cook, in the book, again, I'm referring to him, Sustainability, Human Well-Being, and the Future of Education, it just came out. He said, institutions must provide support to help teachers accelerate their capacity to transform teaching and learning for the 21st century. This is very important. And to our teachers, Mahatma Gandhi says, you may never know what results come from your actions, but if you do nothing, there will be no results. Also, on the issue of partnership, strong partnerships are fundamental to meeting the challenge of the goals. When problems migrate from being local issues to planet-wide issues, paying no respect to geographical, political, or economic boundaries, universities have to adapt and have previously set up to this challenge. We have many examples on HIV cure and others where universities in the north and the south came together. So there has to be that sincerity in partnership, not donation, not just appearing to look good. No, but really being friends and being committed to work together, with those, with others to solve problems. It is important. The issue of partnership cannot be, under stress because it is key. We can't go it alone. No university can change the world alone, no matter how brilliant they are. We have to go. We have to go deeper. Today, new opportunities exist with partnership and collaboration with regards to innovation labs, digital cooperation, and others. Cooperation between North and South should be brought to maturity to ensure sustainable development. Also, it is not enough for an institution to say, I have succeeded in greening the campus. There needs to be leadership for the goals by sharing and transferring this success story, reaching out to peer institutions nationally and internationally, adopt high schools, primary, kindergarten, and nursery schools, spread the sustainability culture, science, and lifestyle. Partnership is crucial to leadership, for without it, leaders lead no one. Higher education have it all. They have the power of knowledge residing in the universities and the power of the youth. It's real. Half the world's population is under 20 years old. They own the world. They own tomorrow. Students need to be given the space to learn and design additional courses. In the book on intergenerational learning and transformative leadership for sustainable futures, edited by Peter Cochrane and Brandon Holished, David Cronley gave a case study of the extremely successful student-run center, the Center for Environment and Development Studies in Uppsala University in Sweden. I've been there, and they are doing great work. More students even prefer to register for the courses developed by the students than the normal courses. This is being done also in the UK. There are more impactful stories of student-led leadership in sustainability in universities all around the world. It should happen more. We should give them the space. Universities need to embrace the heart of sustainability and not just the superficiality, the form, the sleek posture of sustainability. No, that would achieve the goals. That won't give us the world we want. This is not referring to skillful packaging, but real solutions that embrace solidarity, that embrace trust and dignity for one and all. I've referred. We need to cultivate these soft issues in the classroom, in the university administration, in our collaboration, in our conferences, in this place. They should become embedded in our university culture. These themes will ensure our contributions to sustainability, the sustainability vision, lie on a sure foundation to stand the test of time. That's what we want to spend our time doing. They have to do with people. The world is run by people. Technology is controlled by people. Climate change has been exacerbated by people. How far can we go with technology if we ignore each other? Not far enough. We are in the same boat. No remedy for the crisis of climate change or the many trust deficit disorder listed by the Secretary General of the UN will be complete without resolving the importance and place of these soft issues in all efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Delos' report to UNESCO of the International Commission on Education for the 21st Century put it excellently as learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, to become, and learning to live together. And what Charles Hopkins refers to as UNESCO fifth pillar, learning to transform oneself and society, a holistic approach, academic, mental, physical, and emotional. So, draw up your map institutionally, departmentally, and personally. Begin to walk it using the SDGs as markers. Education for sustainable development is the ability to discover and uncover the good in our world. Education well done is always an advantage. It is light. It replicates itself. If we consistently follow the right direction, we will arrive at the right destination. Permit me, in my last 5 minutes, to travel back through time to one of my favorite philosophers. Os Guinness, quoting from the writings of Plato in the 4th century BC. Plato is not just the world's greatest philosopher, but a genius of education. His ideas and examples have made him teacher to the then world. His academy in Athens, the school of the world. Following the defeat of Athens by Sparta in 404 BC, the descent of democracy into demagoguery, and the unjust execution of Socrates in 399 BC, Plato was challenged to think through a new vision of society. The shining city of the golden age of Pericles had become degenerate. Plato's classic response was the Republic, which set out his vision of the ideal state and statecraft as soulcraft. At its heart, in his new view of education, not the cultivation of skills, nor the communication of certain branches of knowledge, but the formation of character and the striving to form one's life so as to fulfill the highest ideals of human excellence. Thus, Plato ties the renewal of the state to the development of the individual. The genius of Plato's state is nuclear. It does not lie in its external structures and laws, but in its spiritual nucleus, the idea of the good and the vision of the good life and the just society built around it, of what he calls the state within. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, only last week at the UN said, our future rests on solidarity. We must repair broken trust. We must reinvigorate our multilateral project, and we must uphold dignity for one and for all. This is what I call the spirit of our task, the soft side of the sustainability quest, the oil that will drive our technology, curriculum, whole school approaches to produce the generation that will deliver the Sustainable Development Goals to every home, to every city, and to every country. This is how we can rise to the challenge of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thomas Edison gave the world electric light, microphones, storage, batteries, sound films, and many other inventions. He said, stay sold on the idea that somewhere a solution to the problem exists, and you'll find it. That's why we're not giving up. That's why we're not going to give up. We are sold to the idea that we can build that future that we want, that our young people, our children, would enjoy tomorrow in this beautiful earth. Keep searching, no matter how many times you meet with disappointment. Just don't give up, nor don't give in. Why? Because we are born explorers. There is an explorer inside all of us. We are born with the insatiable desire to explore, to dive headfirst into the unknown and turn dreams into reality, to walk with time and not to flail in futility against indomitable waves. Yet, now I find myself floundering, an explorer without a world to explore, a dreamer confined within ancient worlds. That which inspires me today may not exist tomorrow. The bottomless pool from which I drink has suddenly gained a bottom. How can you teach me math when there is nothing left to add? Teach me freedom when half the world is enslaved, hungry, and at war. Instruct me in commerce while the money runs out, like teaching a sailor to steer a sieve. Into towering academies, I enter expectant, spying tribute to man's great might and acuity. But amidst that wonder and scintillating thrills, I sense a dearth of justice and love. Show me a world where linked hands disperse wealth and knowledge. Communing minds create energy. Choruses of exciting voices sing of equality. Give me sustainability of substance, and I will give you the future. For one cannot understand time without first knowing hope, and one cannot hope without an imperishable future. Only then can we link the past, the present, and the time to come. As long as there is life, there is hope. Things need not remain this way. So let's rise. Let's soar like the eagle. Let higher education once again be a place for cultivating minds, not merely a production line for spitting out cavalier drones. Universities can be more. There is a future that is possible, and it's in our heart, it's in our heads, and it's in our hands. So let's go create it. Let the young once again look to universities as a place where dreams never die and hope flourishes. As a place yes, let the young look again to universities as a place where dreams live, hope flourishes, and as a campus of possibilities. A campus of possibilities. So, yeah, that's my gift for you. Life can be sold. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Ms. Ogbuigwe. That was amazing. I really just want to say on a personal note, as a Ugandan, it's amazing to see other African female leaders in sustainability.